You may be familiar with the name Galileo, whether it's because he's a famous astronomer or because of the famous Queen song, Galileo, Galileo, and all of that. But for whatever reason, there's an interesting story with him is as he looked out into the heavens with some of the primitive telescopes that they had in their day, and he first discovered Saturn. He actually didn't realize the shape of Saturn, that it had rings around it. He actually saw it, and through blurry vision of a distant telescope at that time, it looked like a planet with two other planets next to it. And so he originally proposed that that's what it was because of the rings on the outside were brighter, but the thin band, as the way that he could see it, he didn't realize that it was actually a planet with rings. The idea of a planet even shaped like that was beyond the understanding in those days of what you could even do. Afraid that he would be ridiculed for his discovery, he actually wrote down his discovery as a cryptogram that he held the key to, so that if he was wrong, he'd never tell anybody what it said, but if he was right, then he could give the key and prove that he had discovered it previously. And I love that idea of just looking out into the heavens. Mankind, Galileo, and many others have looked out into the heavens for centuries. And today, this is what we're doing, Daily Dosers. Hi, my name is Kip Strawbridge, and as we're looking this week at the wonders of creation, I wanted to take us to Isaiah 40, verse 26. It says this, "Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name. Because of his great power and might and mighty strength, not one of them is missing." I love this because as the prophet Isaiah is speaking to the people, he initially goes back and recounts really their tragedy of their disobedience and their pagan worship and all the things they had done to abandon the God who they knew, the God who had followed them, the God who had led them, the God who really created their nation. And he says this as he transitions in chapter 40, he says, "Consider the heavens as a proof for who God is." And I think that same exhortation applies to us. Look at the heavens. I don't know how long it's been since you've gone out and looked at the sky, but if you haven't, it's maybe time. And he says this, he says that he calls them out one by one. I love that. And it says that he knows each of them by name. And in the same way, we see this parallel that in the magnitude of the creation of the universe, God knows the name of every star, and yet at the same time, our finite human existence, he knows each of our names as well. And it just reminds me of the uniqueness of creation and our special place in it. And then he goes on and he says, because of his power. And I want to pause there for a moment. There's a story that is a really interesting story about two scientists who were actually both believers having a conversation as one of the NASA shuttles had gone out and gotten better photographs since Galileo had of the rings of Saturn. And it had come back that the appearance of the rings, ring F, they number them, or letter them, A, B, C, D, ring F appeared to be braided. And these two scientists were really excited about it, and as they were discussing it, one of them said, "Isn't it amazing that to this day we had no idea, but since the beginning of creation, God braided the rings of Saturn, that one day we would see it and remember that he's that powerful." And the other scientist said, or maybe he just braided it for the photograph. And I love that perspective that God could have done either. If we really understand his power, the power that Isaiah is asking us to consider. This is the God who's so powerful that calls out the stars, that he could have braided them since the beginning of time, but he could have braided them for the photograph. And I love that. Which then he says, they are in their place and not one of them is missing. And this is what I want to leave you with. That if he loves the stars and he loves us, we are both his creation. He knows their name, he knows our name. They're in their place. Let me encourage you this, you're in your place. Wherever you find yourself, whatever you're doing, you are in your place. And because of his great might and power, not one of them is missing. And so wherever you find yourself, when you ask the question, why am I here? Change it from a question of doubt and skepticism to a question of seeking honesty. God, why am I here? What do you want me to do in this place? Because you put me here and you know my name. And because of your great power, I'm here for a reason. So remember that, Daily Dosers. This is the God we serve. Have a great day.